This episode has been brought to you by our friends over at CMB Law. If you find yourself in a tight spot and you need an attorney to trust, call Courtney over at CMB Law, 941-747-4440 or 941-725-9457. You can also visit her site at cmbjustice.com. cmbjustice.com. Again, that's Courtney at CMB Law. Tell them that Thomas FreeMe sent you from the Thomas FreeMe podcast show. Hey everybody, I just want to take a moment to thank all my subscribers and listeners that dedicate a little bit of time just to hear what I got to say. Thank you so much, but the struggle is real and it continues. Please spread awareness and do your part by making sure that you are subscribed and liking each of the episodes that you listen to. Share my episodes and spread awareness of my channel and what it is that I'm doing. These little things right here is what helps me grow and helps sponsorship come my way, as I am a struggling ex-con. I appreciate the support, the love, and thank you so much for tuning in. More to come. Welcome back everybody. The Thomas FreeMe TV and podcast show. As you know, this is continued coverage of me giving my thoughts and opinions on the Ahmaud Arbery trial as it continues each day. I am watching it thoroughly from start to finish as much as I possibly can, taking notes, and I'm going to do just a recap as just my opinions on what I see going on. Please don't forget to like and share the program, the Thomas FreeMe podcast. Please just do your part in spreading awareness. So first and foremost, before I get started, let me just wish everybody the best. I pray that your Monday was a true blessing. I pray that everything went your way today. There was no stress, no drama. If there was, let it go. Let it go. Just taking a deep breath and just let all of it go. The day is over. Forgive who has trespassed against you, and just know that we're capable of doing the same things, and just let it go. People got issues, so just let it go. Go to bed easy tonight. So first person was Sheila Ramos, and let me say this. I'm not impressed with this prosecutor team at all. I'm not impressed with the state and how they're presenting the case. I'm not impressed. So let me just start by saying this about my perception of what I'm seeing so far. The state has every opportunity to prove these three defendants, Greg McMichael, the son Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan, guilty of murder. There's no question. There's so much evidence, just the video alone and all of these things. And I'm saying this because the prosecution seems like they're not ready at all, that they're not well equipped at all, and they seem like they have to present, like they don't have the smoking gun, per se. It's kind of odd. It's I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but to me it's like the prosecutor just has to sit back and just coast this one through, because there's just such overwhelming evidence, and we know that these people are trying to cover their tracks and that they lied, and we know it was a lynch mob. We know this. They have to prove, hey, it gets fine because, we're innocent until proven guilty. But in cases like this here, that these people are guilty. It's just allowing them to prove their guiltiness, I guess, if I'm saying this right. I know it's a fine line and it's difficult. The defense's strategy is that this was, a citizen's arrest, that they were tracking this person down. They didn't know who he was. This person was in the neighborhood. There was an instance prior to this, several weeks. I'm taking that one of them may have saw Arbery pull a pistol or attempt to pull a pistol or look like he was trying to pull a pistol. So they thought that this intruder of these homes and boats and things of the neighborhood was, running around armed. So this is the defense strategy. And again, you just the prosecuting, the state just has to sit back and just like, okay, well, let's see you do that, buddy. How do you explain this? How do you explain that? I just think that they're going too much. They're going too overzealous. Okay, so let me get into how I'm saying this. So first off, you have Sheila Ramos, who's the crime scene collector. Now, she is in the nation's eye as to how well she has done her job, and it wasn't well at all, especially in a case of this magnitude. She was up there. The whole crime scene wasn't even taped off, so you only had a partial crime scene. The trucks wasn't even involved in the initial crime scene, so it was just chaos on the scene in the sense that there was nobody there to protect Ahmaud. There was nobody there to show respect towards him. It was more in the sense as to a common occurrence almost, like, shit, this happened again, let's just tape this off, do the routine, and that's it. So this crime scene collector, she did not collect evidence from the trail that Arbery ran down. She could have went down that trail that he ran down to very well see if he had discarded any weapons, discarded any drugs, discarded any items that he may have stolen from these burglaries that he was suspected of doing. So this crime scene investigator, collector, if you will, never really did her job to the best extent. She was just there to clean up the scene. Now, whether she was just told to go there and do as she was told, or is she just that bad at her job? But either way, the sense that I got from her was that, again, she was up there trying to protect herself, her job, her dignity, her integrity, as far as her work integrity. It really didn't go well. There was instances again where she's put on the spot. The defense, the investigation was done so bad that the defense could easily just show all the loopholes in the investigation. So when the defense is up there asking, well, is it possible? Did you check the alleyway that Arbery ran through? Did you know that is it possible he discarded some of this as he was running? Well, no, nobody checked. Nobody even thought of it. It was just a come sweep and get out and end the day. The pictures and the videos that the state decided to show was very graphic. It was a very, very graphic scene. I've seen scenes like this inside, where there's just a lot of blood. You have your main arteries are hit, spliced, and it's just gruesome. There's blood everywhere, and the body is lifeless. It's like looking at a wax museum, figure just laying there, or however, and it's just lifeless. So they decided to show these graphic details explicitly, and of course it's for shock value. You want the jury to fully understand the magnitude of what happened to this kid. They did show the entry point of the shotgun blast into the side, and it looks like, it kind of looked like, those big, if you're from an airplane or you see it from an aerial shot, like those big mining depots, a big mining outpost where it just spirals down into the ground, deep. Well, this is kind of how that reminded me, and it just went into like a black abyss of the body, but it was a hole. It was a hole, man. How they did this poor boy, and it's tragic, it's tragic, but they had to show these things. Well, they didn't have to, but they decided to show these as evidence, and I just can't imagine the mother, the father. I'm a parent. How could I see something like that in the court and maintain sanity. Maintain sanity. I ask myself this, every time I see things like this, is how would I react in this moment, being a parent? So then we had the next witness called by the state, which was the first responding officer on the scene, Officer Minshew. Now, I have a real problem with Officer Minshew because he's a liar. And not only is he a liar, but he's protecting his own neck. And it's evidently clear as he's on the stand that he's very cautious of what he says. And again, he knows that the world is looking at him, wanting to know how he responded on that scene. Because let's not forget now, there was several weeks that went by. Multiple weeks went by after this where these defendants killed this man. They were allowed to go home, shower, change, things of this nature. And as if nothing happened. They were just allowed to go home. And no pressure was put on these people to be arrested. There were no arrests until after the incident with the deceased of Mr. George Floyd. And then the nation started coming behind and saying, listen, man, what happened here? What happened down here in Brunswick, Georgia, and how come there's no arrests? And then finally there were arrests made. So, the world wants to know what happened. What happened? So you have Officer Minshew, and he gets up there on the stand and he gets introduced and he starts breaking down, what happened when he got on the scene, how he was arriving on the scene. He rolled his windows down, as cops do, to start being aware of their environment. And he heard something that was thunderous, which either resembled gunshots or fireworks. He says that fireworks are not uncommon in the daytime in that area, but that particular day, it did strike as a little uncommon. So he was pulling up to the scene unprepared for what was going on. He testified as he pulled up on the scene, he saw a body that was bloodied, decimated, I believe is the word that he used, in the middle of the road. And he saw a few people just kind of pacing back and forth in small little areas off to the side. Actually, that he was waved down. I'm sorry, he was waved down. And that's when he pulled up to the scene. By the one, he saw the other two over there pacing, and then the gruesome details of Mr. Ahmaud Arbery laying in the street. When he got out, he testified that he did hear Mr. Arbery still breathing, what he called a death rattle. He went on to explain what that was and that he's heard it several times in his professional career as law enforcement, but that he was still alive. The questioning went into, why did you not help this man? Right? It was clarified that he did not have emergency medical equipment in his car other than just your common everyday first aid kit with gauze and ointment and things of that nature. But his Officer Minshew's testimony was the fact that it was scene integrity. He pulled up to the scene. He was unaware of what was going on. The body was down. He didn't know where the weapons were at. So he didn't want to administer medical attention to a person without really scene security, because an officer's first duty is to protect themselves. It's kind of bone-chilling to listen to his testimony. I suggest that you do. But what's bone-chilling about it is the coldness of it. Again, it's somebody that's protecting themselves. It's somebody that's number one priority and concern is to make sure that I don't say anything that's going to get me involved in this. Because I know I fucked up. And truly, I know that when I was there on that scene that I really didn't give a shit, because I guarantee if it was his child, he wouldn't be so worried about scene integrity. He would have been trying to put whatever gauze he had over this gaping hole that was bleeding, comforting the boy, At least just holding the boy and comforting him and sending him on his way, at least in the arms of love. So that's what his excuse was for not providing any medical attention to this young man, was the fact that he was scared. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know who the enemies were, such and such. I can understand that to a point. I honestly can. You're the only officer on scene. Somebody's dead, so you know there's a murderer there somewhere, right? And you have no idea if this person's going to shoot you in your back while you're administering, CPR. You have no idea. I do understand that. I do. That just was not the case here. This is why I say that Minshew is a liar. This is why I say there are no good cops. Because a good cop that takes an oath and swears to protect the communities, and this is the issues that I have, is the fact that a good cop would get up on the stand, a good cop would get up on the stand and he would tell the truth. You took an oath. You swore under oath to tell the truth. And you didn't, because your main priority is not to find these people guilty, is not to protect this young man that was killed. It was murdered in broad daylight in the middle of the street. You're protecting yourself because you fucked up, Minshew. Officer Minshew. So the coldness of how he testifies about it that day is bone-chilling. To know that these are our officers that are sworn to protect us. The reason why I say this is because later on he testifies in cross-examination that he was okay. He wasn't in a threatened manner, and the body cam that he was wearing was showing this. He's nonchalantly walking around. There was no threatening manner to him. The other two dudes, the father and son, were just casually sitting off talking to each other. There was no scene integrity whatsoever. None of them were in handcuffs. None of them were detained. None of them were separated. There was no scene integrity whatsoever. This was a scene again where an officer pulled up as if this was a common occurrence, as if this was almost like it was a lynching. Your common lynch mob where this occurred and we just come clean it up and set it right and go about our daily business. We don't have to worry about this guy coming around here no more. That is how Officer Minshew was testifying today. And as the mother and father of this boy, of this child, they have to sit in the courtroom and listen to this. Listen to this officer speak in this fashion, testify in the court under oath in this fashion, and lie. He didn't want to help Arbery. He saw that boy the way that he was, and he said, there's no way I'm going to put my hands on that. It wasn't in his concern at all, other than to call for medical to help that boy. There was no concern in him. There was no human compassion. And this is an officer of the law. There was no human compassion from any of them. Any compassion that you see coming from the McMichaels or Brian, William Bryan, is the fact that they know that they're in fucking trouble. That's all they're thinking about, is that they know that they're in trouble. This is serious. Not the fact that this boy is dying. Nobody wanted to try to help him. And the fact that Minshew can sit up on that stand and try to justify the fact why he let that young boy die that day is sickening. It's disgusting that this is what our police force are. So the testimony continued. The prosecution in that case, they and again, this is the state's witness. This is the state's witness. The questions that were asked, I feel just it just wasn't prepared. It just seemed unprepared, for the prosecution, man. I hope they tighten up. I hope they do. I hope they go home tonight and they sit down and they review and they ask, like, what the hell are we doing? We're trying to give this trial away. We've already gave them a hell of an appeal, so it's like, what are you doing? We found out that Officer Minshew allowed the neighbor, William Bryan, to go home. He told him to go home. If it needed him, they'll call him. Because, in defense, William Bryan said that he was just, he saw what was going on. He jumped in the truck and he was just filming. That he really had nothing to do with it. We found out later, of course, that was a lie and untrue, which he wasn't charged with obstruction of justice or lying to an officer or anything of that nature at that time. But he was allowed to go home. So how much in fear are you, Officer Minshew, that these guys are just walking around and there's casual talk. There's no fear in their talk. Officer Minshew was not in fear. He's just not. And that's bullshit. He was not going to survive those shots. But how do you know that? How do you know that pulling up on the scene? You don't even know the extent of the wounds. You don't know anything. So how is your first inclination not to help this person? It just wasn't the intention. And he probably even knew that this happened. He may even have known that he was pulling up onto the scene. That's almost like what it was. I really don't know. To me, it's just bone chilling again to know that we have officers out there that are like that. And there's many of them. Minshew's not the only one. After that, the state called Officer Adam Jackson, which was the second responding. And again, it was a mess. This is the state's witnesses. And when the state asked Officer Adam Jackson if he reviewed his body cam before coming that day, he says, no, I didn't review it. None of them are taking this serious. They don't even it's like they don't even understand why they're there. They're not there for Ahmaud Arbery. They're there just to cover their own ass, say what they need to say, and get out of there because they want to be done with this. They don't like their name in the national spotlight, but that's all this is. This was not a strong day for the prosecution at all. At all. I didn't see anything in the trial where, that was landmark for the defense. There was maybe a small little few wins in there as far as maybe because there was questioning from the defense because one of the charges is where they were trying to the McMichaels were trying to block off Arbery with their truck, so false imprisonment, and then whatever the other charge was, which is kind of like false imprisonment, but it's not. So it's like you have to remember that you have all of these charges. So if you're inquiring as to why they're going into such details about the cornering of the trucks, things of that nature, the fibers on the truck, because they're charged with your malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. So the state is trying to prove guilt in all of these counts. This is the meticulousness of the trial and the evidence and everything that happened that day is to show proof that all of those charges were committed for many reasons. One, in the sense that if they do get found not guilty of the malice murder, it's what have they been found guilty of after that. So it's the state's job to prove all of those counts. It's what the state does is when they're preparing for their indictments is these are the charges that we're willing to take to trial that we know that we can prove. So in each of the line of questionings from the prosecutors and from the state is in that sense to prove guilt in all of these counts, to show that these men cornered this man and would not allow him to escape from which area that they cornered him. That's the false imprisonment. The aggravated assault is, again, the stop or I'll blow your fucking head off. I'm gonna kill you. Those are the aggravated assaults, the threats on the person. And then, of course, we know the murders. So, again, this third officer, Officer Adam Jackson, again, there was no empathy for the family, no empathy for what happened that day. Just coldness, and the fact that Officer Jackson really didn't have too much to testify to other than what he pulled up to and was trying to establish scene integrity at that time as well. But I really honestly don't know what the jury's thinking in this moment. It's there was a lot of note taking from the jurors, especially some from the women. So the jurors seem attentive for the most part, and I honestly don't know. It's still you have to say that's a huge mountain for the defense to have to climb to prove that this was self-defense. Again, you have Officer Minshew testifying to the fact that nobody, not one of the three, ever came to him and said anything about wanting to make a citizen's arrest. Citizen's arrest never left anybody's mouth to Officer Minshew. No charges that these three may have been wanting to attribute to Mr. Arbery was mentioned to Mr. Minshew at all. There was no mention of burglary. There was no mention of anything. When the fact, well, did you see a weapon on him? Possibly. He possibly had one the last time we saw him. Everything was all speculation. The whole thing was speculation. And on that day that they wanted to make this this quote-unquote citizen's arrest, it was based on speculation. There was no visual of Mr. Arbery committing any crimes that day. Not one. There wasn't even any proof or testimony that they even knew that this was the person from earlier that they had under suspicion. It was all speculation. It was a lynch mob, that's why. It was a lynch mob. They lynched that boy that day. This is why they need to be drugged behind 4 horses in 4 separate ways. It was a lynch mob. That's all it was. That's all it was. What I do want you guys to pay attention to, if you do happen to go back and review, is very important. And I'm going to keep bringing this up, is the power that the prosecutor has in the courtroom. It was displayed again today, and it'll be displayed tomorrow, and it's going to be displayed every day. The power that the prosecutor has when working the courtroom. Just look. Just watch the judge. Watch Judge Walmsley as he responds to the prosecutor and her objections, the state's objections versus the defense objections. I think Mr. Walmsley is a fair judge as far as fairness goes in the court of law, from what I could see so far. However, it's still evidently clear to a trained eye the favoritism the state gets over defendants. So I do want you to pay attention to that. And that's it. That's all I have for you guys. Please leave me any opinions, likes, shares. Am I doing good enough coverage for you? Am I updating you enough? Is there anything in particular you would like me to pay more attention to? And that's it. Just, keep it clean, man. Keep it positive. Keep it pimping. It's Monday. We got a long week to go and a short time to get there. I love you guys, man. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Peace. I'm out.